Welcome to LIVEDAF, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Shabbos Daf Nun, one Daf Memtes Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, Begizeit Semer ve'metaltel noisan. The Mishnah teaches us that if one chooses to use Gizeit Semer, shearings of wool, for Atmana, to wrap with them his pot, he can do so, because they're not Moisef Hevel, they don't generate heat. However, you must know that they are Muktzah, ve'metaltel noisan, one cannot move them on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Omar Rava lo yishanu. This halacha of muktzah regarding Gizeit Semer was only said, Ella, only provided shaloi taman behem, that he hadn't used them for atmana. In that case, they're muktzah. Why a Gizeit Semer muktzah? So some Farshim say because they're considered to be muktzah machmas gufoy on account of the fact that they have no practical use on Shabbos. They're intended to be used to be spun into threads, be woven into material. Others learn that the Gizeit Semer are considered to be muktzah, machmas, on account of chisor and kis. The owner won't use them for other purposes, for concern of damaging them. So either way, they're considered to be muktzah, but Rava tells us that's only provided he hasn't used them for atmana. Avol, says the Gemara, taman ben, but if he used them for atmana, metaltel and oisan, he can move them on Shabbos, they lose their muktzah status, because using them for atmana is tantamount to, it's as though he was miyach them. He designated them for this permissible use, and we don't regard them as muktzah items any longer. Says the Gemara, is that so? Eisvei hahum rabbanon bar yomi l'rava. So this rabbanon, this person who came to the Beis Medrash, this was his first day, bar yomi, the first day that he attended the Beis Medrash, and he asked the kasha of Rava. So apparently he wasn't a fixed feature in the Beis Medrash. He was a newcomer. Nevertheless, he had the ability to ask a very strong kasha, to challenge Rava to the extent that the Gemara actually retracts the statement of Rava as a result of this kasha. So what was this kasha? Toimnim beGizeit Semer. Take a look at our Mishnah. It says you're allowed to use Gizeit Semer for Atmana. However, ve'ein metaltel noisan, they're muktzah. And the Mishnah continues. Keitzad oiseh. So what is he meant to do? If he covers his pot with these Gizeit Semer, how is he meant to access his pot and take out the contents? Says the Mishnah, so he picks up the lid and has the Gizeit Semer slide off. So by lifting the lid and having the Gizeit Semer slide off, he doesn't have to come into direct contact with these Gizeit Semer, and therefore he can access his pot. Apparently, Mishnah is teaching us that Gizeit Semer are still muktzah. They still retain their muktzah status even after their use for atmana. So this is in direct contradiction to Rava's statement. Says the Gemara, you're right, Eloi itmar, hachi itmar. If we meant to learn, quote, this statement from Rava, this is really how we meant to teach it. Omar Rava, lo yishanu, when are Gizeit Semer considered to be muktzah? Ela shelo yichdan latmana. That's only provided that he had never designated them. He wasn't miyachad them. As Rashi says, yichdan latmana la'olam. He hadn't permanently designated these Gizeit Semer for the use of atmana. Aval yichdan latmana. But if he was miyachad them for atmana la'olam, permanently, then certainly they changed their status. Metalten oisam, one can move them on Shabbos. They're not regarded as a muktzah item going forward. But merely using them for atmana, the shimush itself doesn't change its status. Says the Gemara Itzmar Nam, we also learned, Ki also Rabban, when Rabban came, Omar Rav Yaakov, Omar Rav Asi, Ben Shmuel, Omar Rebbe. So he taught us follows in the name of Rebbe, Lo Yishanu. When do we regard these Gizeit Semer as being muktzah? Elash lo yichtan atmana. When he had not designated them permanently for the use of atmana. Aval yichtan atmana, but otherwise, if he did set them aside for atmana, metalton oisan, they're considered to be ordinary items and not muktzah any longer. So, the case in our Mishnah is not a contradiction to this, because our Mishnah is speaking about Gizeit Semer that were merely used for atmana, but were not designated to be used for atmana. He didn't permanently set them aside for atmana. Therefore, merely shimush doesn't change its status, and they're still considered to be muktzah. Continues the Gemara. Ravina Omer, I'm going to answer the kasha from our Mishnah. Certainly, Rabba's first version was correct. If a person takes gizei tzemer and merely uses them for atmana, that is sufficient to be matir the tiltul of these gizei tzemer, because it's as though he was miyach them, at least temporarily, for atmana. So what then does the Mishnah mean? That gizei tzemer are still considered to be muktzah, even those gizei tzemer that were already used for atmana? Says Ravina. The Mishnah is speaking about a unique case. Bishal heftek shana. We're speaking about gizei tzemer which were stored for commercial use. Rashi says they pile them up, they designate them for schora to be used for sale, for commercial use. In that case, merely taking some of these gizei tzemer and diverting them for atmana doesn't change their status, because he's certainly going to restore it. He's going to bring it back and bring it back to the heftik, to the storehouse, to the pile of commercial goods, and therefore merely using them does not change their designation. They still have the status of muktzah items. Once again, Ravina Omer, Bishal heftik shanu. These gizei tzemer, now Mishnah speaking about those that are lying in the heftik, these piles, these places of storage for commercial items. They're intended for sale, for schora, and therefore they're still considered to be muktzah, regardless of whether he used them or didn't use them for atmana. Tani namayachi. We have a brayso in support of this as well. The brayso says, gizei tzemer shel heftik, ein metalt noisan. So these gizei tzemer that was set aside for commercial use, who piled up for schora, ein metalt noisan, they're considered to be muktzah. V'hi meskinon balabayis le'shtamish ben. However, if the Baal Bayis set them aside and designated them to be used, as we said before, it must be a yichud la'olam, a permanent designation. In that case, it certainly changes its status, even if these are gizei tzemer of the heftik. Metalton oisa, one can be metalton on Shabbos. So as Rashi and Tosfos both point out, that Rava and Ravina concur. They're both on the same page. Indeed, when Rava told us that gizei tzemer that were used for atmana are no longer considered to be muktzah, this is what he meant. He meant ordinary gizei tzemer, not those that are set aside in the heftik, in the warehouse for schora, for commercial use. He's speaking about regular gizei tzemer, and therefore if he uses them for atmana, that changes its status. It's considered as though he designated, at least temporarily, for atmana, for this permissible use on Shabbos, and it's considered to be non-muktzah item. However, the Mishnah is speaking about heftik. So those gizei tzemer that were piled up for schora, certainly those gizei tzemer cannot become mutter simply by using them for atmana. Those gizei tzemer require a yichud la'olam, a permanent designation. As the brayso tells us, the Baal Bayis needs to designate his skin on Baal Bayis le'ishtamash ben. In that case, this designation changes the status of even gizei tzemer of the heftik. So in summary, what is the halacha of gizei tzemer? So if he was meyached them lo'olam for other uses, for instance for atmana, then ordinary gizei tzemer, even gizei tzemer of heftik, change their status. They are no longer considered to be muktzah items. However, if he merely used them, he was taman b'hem, then it depends. Ordinary gizei tzemer become mutter through merely hatmana. However, the gizei tzemer of the schora, of the heftik, lying in that warehouse, they don't change their status merely by using them for atmana, because he's certainly going to bring it back there. They still have that. They still have that schora identity to them. They're still regarded as items of commercial use, and therefore they still retain their muktzah status. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabba Bar Bachana Kamei de Rab. Rabba Bar Bachana presented the following brayso in front of Rav. The brayso says as follows: Chariyos shel dekel, these branches of the palm tree, the hard branches, shegodron leitzim, which he harvested to be used for firewood. However, v'nimlach alein the yeshiva, he changed his mind and decided to use them to sit on them. Tzorich lekasha, he needs to tie them, to bundle them together, and do a maisa to indicate his intention, to be megala his das, to reveal his plans, that he intends on using them no longer for firewood, but rather, at least for the time being, he intends on using them for yeshiva, to sit on them. And this will make them muktzah no longer. This makes them lose their muktzah status. So initially his intention was to use them for firewood, and by doing so they're considered to be muktzah. But if he goes ahead and ties them together, he does a maisa, which is meichiach, that is intended for yeshiva. It demonstrates that the intent and purpose here is to use them for sitting on them. That affects its status and is no longer considered to be muktzah. So according to Tanakama, a maisa, an action is required. A maisa which facilitates the use of these eitzim for the permissible use. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, ein tzarich lekasha. It doesn't need to actually tie them together. A maisa is not necessary. It's enough if he intends on using them for yeshiva, if he has a machshava, a plan, that is sufficient. Continues the Gemara, who tanila? So Rabbi Bechana was the one who presented this brisa, V'hu Amarla, and he commented on that halacha, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that the halacha follows Shimon Gamliel's the shita, that a maisa is not required, a machshava is sufficient. Continues the Gemara, we actually have a machlokes amarayim in this regard. It's my learned. Rav Amar Kosher. He needs to tie them. He needs to have a maisa, which indicates his intent and purpose. Ushmuel Amar Choshev. Machshava, planning, intention is sufficient. For Rav Asi Amar, none of the above is required. Yoshev. Even merely using them, sitting on them before Shabbos. The shimush itself is mater, these eitzim. It makes them lose their muktzah status. Yoshev afal bishaloi kisher, even though he didn't tie them, he didn't bundle them. Va'afal bishaloi kisher, even though he didn't even have kavana, he didn't have intention to use them tomorrow for yeshiva. He merely sat on them on Erev Shabbos. That already changes its status, and we consider it to be designated for yeshiva, for sitting, and it is no longer considered to be muktzah. Okay, so we have a brisa, which contains two opinions. The Tanakama says a maisa is needed. Shmuel says a maisa is not needed. A machshava is sufficient. Then we have a machlokes amarayim. Rav says we need a maisa. We need to do an act which aids and assists and facilitates the shimush heter. For instance, bundling these pieces of wood together, which enables it for yeshiva. Shmuel says machshava is enough. Rav Asi says even shimush is enough. So we're going to try to align the Amarayim with the Tanoim. So we'll go as follows. Bishleima Rav, we understand that Rav, who the Amar Tanakam, Rav who requires Maisa, he concurs with Shita Tanakam, who also requires Maisa. Ushmuel Nami, who the Amar Shimon Gamliel, Shmuel concurs with the Shita of Shimon Gamliel, who tells us that machshava is sufficient. El Rav Asi, who tells us that neither maisa nor machshava is required. Even merely using it before Shabbos is sufficient to give it a status of a non-muktzah item. Damar Kaman, whose shita is he following? Says the Gemara, we found the shita. Who the Amar Ki Haitana, he follows the following Tana, the Sanhedrin we learned in the Brisa. Yoitzin bepikurin ubetzipa. So pikurin are these pieces of combed flax. Betzipa are combed pieces of combed wool. So the point of these objects is to place it on one's wound to protect it from his clothing rubbing and irritating the wound. It's not meant for refuah because refuah can be done on Shabbos. So these pieces of fibers of material can be placed on the mak on Shabbos, and he can actually take it out with him. Go out to a public domain, to Rosh Hashanah. It's not considered to be carrying. Tosfos points out, it's not considered to be a muktzah item as well, because it's considered to be a malbush. It's like an article of clothing. Once again, says the Brisa, Yoitzin, one can walk out to Rosh Hashanah, bepekurin or betzipa. When? provided that he designated it. He prepared it for this use. Bizman shetzavan, b'shemen, he dipped it in oil, which softens it and protects the makkah from being irritated by the clothing. V'korcham b'meshicha, he wrapped it with some sort of strap, a ribbon, which will enable him to attach it, to strap it onto himself and ensure that this bandage doesn't fall off. So when he does these acts of preparation, he turns it into sort of a malbush, and one can be metaltal on Shabbos. It's not muktzah. One can walk out with it to Rosh Hashanah. It's not considered to be carrying a load. It's considered to be like one of his articles of clothing. However, loy savan b'shemen. But if he didn't dip it in oil, or he didn't wrap it with this meshicha, so he didn't do these two acts of preparation, then ein yotzim behem, he cannot carry it out with him, because it doesn't have a din, doesn't have a status of a garment, of a malbush, and as Tosfos points out, it's also muktzah, because it's not considered to be a kli. So the Brisa tells us that in order to make this into a malbush, into a kli, you need to get it full of oil, you need to get the strap on it. However, the Brisa concludes, but if he walked out with it for one moment, before Shabbos, so if he already used it before Shabbos, as Tosfos points out, it doesn't necessarily mean he needs to walk out Shus Ram with it. Hu Adin, says Tosfos, Yoshaben bebeisa, he sat in his home with it, meaning he used it for a moment before Shabbos. In that case, the shimush itself grants it a status of a malbush, even without those acts of preparation of smearing with oil, putting the strap on it. Mutar lotas b'hem, he can use it on Shabbos. So the Brisa clearly tells us that even without a maisa, even without preparing it and facilitating it for use, merely by using it, the shimush itself changes its status, grants it a status, a din of a malbush, of a kli, and it is muktzah no longer. Says the Gemara, indeed, this is a source, Tana, of the Shita Rav Asi, who maintains as well that a muktzah item can lose its muktzah status merely by use, by shimush. Omer Rav Ashi, afanan nametanina. I will also show you a mission that we learned, which will support Rav Asi's din. The Mishnah says, Hakash al gabemita, you have a pile of kash, of straw, lying on a bed, and he wants to use the bed, and this straw, this stiff straw which is piled up, is getting in the way. He can't move it around and flatten out the straw using his hand directly, because kash is muktzah. Why is kash muktzah? Rashi explains, because generally kash, straw, is intended to be used for cement making, for making of bricks, or lahasaka, to be used as fuel in a fire. So it's considered to be muktzah. He can't directly come into contact with it, but he can move it around using his body. So indirect contact is okay. However, if it was designated to be used for animal feet, or alternatively, there was a car, a pillow lying on it, or a sheet lying on it from before Shabbos. In that case, it is not considered to be muktzah any longer. The kash loses its muktzah status. Why? As a result of being used before Shabbos. Having this kar or sudden placed on the kash is considered to be a shimush heter, and this makes the kash lose its muktzah status. Shma mino, indeed this is a raya to Rav Asi. So once again we have three shitos. In order to change the status of a muktzah object, what do you need to do? Either maisa, machshava, or merely shimush. Continues the Gemara. Let's go back to the Brisa, where we had a shita of Rav Shimon Gamliel, who tells us that machshava is sufficient, intention, planning, to use it is sufficient to change the status. Tanakama disagrees. Tanakama says, no, you need specifically maisa, an act, a maisa which facilitates its use. For instance, tying together the eitzim in a bundle. Who who exactly is the Tana? Who is the author of that Shita? We had no name. We had a Tanakam without a name. Says the Gemara, Uman Tana, the Palaged der Shem Gamliel. Who exactly is that Tana, which was mentioned anonymously in the Brisa? Says the Gemara, it's actually Rav Chanina ben Akavya. How do we know that? The Chiyas Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, he told us, Amar Zeiri. So he told us the name of Zeiri, Amar Rav Chanina, Pamachas, Holach Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya l'mokem echad. There was once an incident where Rav Chanina ben Akavya went to a certain place. Umatza, he encountered Chariyah shel dekel, these hardened palm tree branches, shegadrom l'shometzim, that were harvested for the sake of firewood, and they're muktzah. Now they wanted to use them tomorrow on Shabbos, so he instructed his students. He instructed his talmidim to do as follows: go out there v'chishvu, and intend on using these eitim tomorrow, so we can go out and use them and sit on them tomorrow. He didn't require them to bundle them up. Machshav alone was sufficient. However, Zeiri concluded this story by saying, "V'lo yadana." I'm unsure, I'm uncertain whether if the circumstance there was involving a Beis Hamishta, a wedding, a Beis Ha'avalava, or it was for a mourner's home, and since they were preoccupied with these mitzvahs, they didn't have the time to go ahead and tie them together. Therefore, Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva was lenient in this regard. He didn't require them to go in and bundle them. Says the Gemara, this implies the fact that he says I'm not sure whether it was this or that. Apparently, that is the reason for the kula, for the leniency. That is the reason why he didn't require them to bundle them. Dafka, specifically Beis Ha'aval, or Beis Hamishta, they treated because they were preoccupied. Therefore, in that case, machshava was sufficient. Aval hacha, but here, in an ordinary scenario, we had the time to go ahead and bundle them. In this case, bundling is required. Kashar in, if you bundle these branches together, he did a maisa to indicate that he intends on using them for yeshiva, then it loses its muktzah status. But loy kashar loy, but otherwise it's still muktzah. So apparently this is indeed the Tanakama who requires a maisa. It was only in that unique circumstance where it was a Beis Ha'aval, Beis Hamishta, where they didn't have the opportunity. It wasn't possible for them to tie together. They were tired, they were preoccupied. Therefore, a leniency was applied. But ordinarily speaking, a maisa is required. Continues the Gemara. We find a similar concept with Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda taught us that this idea that although a maisa is required generally, but if a maisa is not feasible, then the Chacham were lenient and allowed even a machshava to suffice. As we will see in the following halacha, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Machnis Adam, a person could bring in maloi kupasai offer, so he can spill out a whole basket, a whole box of earth into his home. Why is he doing that? To use it for his needs, to cover some waste with it. So we don't consider the offer to be muktzah. Why? Darash Marzutra, Mishmei de Marzutra Rabba. So he taught us in the name of Marzutra Rabba, V'hu sheyichle keren zavos. When indeed is the offer not considered to be muktzah, provided that he designated for it a keren zavos, a corner, so he piled it up in the corner. And by doing so, he prepared it, he designated it for this use. However, if he merely piles it in the middle of his home, that's not sufficient to lose its muktzah status. Why is that? Explains Rashi. Let's take a look at Rashi inside. These 20 lines from the bottom. Rashi says, "V'hu sheyichel lo keren zavos." Why? It's considered to be muchan, prepared and designated for this purpose. However, if he merely spills in the middle of the room over there, limidras raglayim, will be trampled by the passerby, or the members of his household. Hariyu batel legabe karkayis habayis. It is considered to be nullified to the karka of the house. Muktzah v'asa. It's muktzah. So it's only provided that he put it in the corner, he designated on the side, and in that case it's considered to be muchan and not muktzah. Says the Gemara, apparently the fact that merely piling it in the Karen Zavis is sufficient, even though it's merely a machshava. It was merely an intention that took place here. There was no mice here because piling it in the corner is not an intrinsic change in the offer. There was no. He didn't facilitate it for use. He didn't enable it for use. It's merely a change of location. He took it from the outside and piled it in the corner of his home. This is not considered to be a maisa, which is indicative of the future use of this offer. So apparently, Rabbi Yehuda tells us that by this offer, a machshava, intent, planning is sufficient to render it a non-muksa item. Amru Rabbanan kamei Rav. So Rabbanan said in front of Rav Papa that if we're going to analyze this halacha, apparently we're going to conclude Keman. Who does Rabbi Yehuda follow? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. He's following the sheet of Shimon Gamliel, who says that merely machshav is sufficient to be matir the muktzah item betiltal on Shabbos. The ikra Rabbanan, because according to the sheet of Rabbanan, ha'amri b'inan ma'isa, they require a ma'isa. This is not considered to be a ma'isa. Papa, no. Even if you propose that Rav Yehuda is actually following Shittas Rabbanan, who generally require Maisa to be matir the chayvetz betiltel. But this is different. Why? At kan lakam Rabbanan to be a Maisa. When do Rabbanan require Maisa? Ela midi, only regarding a chayvetz, an object, the bar avida be Maisa, where a Maisa is possible. It is possible to do a maisa with it. For instance, those branches, we can simply bundle them up. So a bundling, a maisa is required. Aval midi, the lav bar me'avde be maisa. However, an item, a chayfetz, which a maisa is not feasible. It's not possible to do a maisa to it. For instance, this offer, what's it going to do to facilitate its future use? It's offer, it's sand, it's dirt. So a ma'isa doesn't apply here. The whole concept of doing an action doesn't apply. Loi. Indeed, a ma'isa is not required in this case. Now the question is why? If a ma'isa is a requirement, how can we remove this requirement just because you can't do it? Why should the machshava be sufficient? Explains the Ritva, because in reality, a machshava should really suffice. If he has the intent purpose to use this chayfetz for a shimush heter, that really should be enough to make it mutter betiltel. However, the Rabbanan were machmer. They applied a stringency. They said, it's not sufficient, it's not enough to have a machshava. One needs to actually indicate, to reveal, to demonstrate that this chayfe is going to be used for that purpose, for that function. Therefore, the Chacham required, in addition to machshava, it also required a ma'isa to be done. But this is a chumah, this is a stringency. Therefore, says the Ritva, in a case where that can't be done, it's simply not feasible. So the Rabbanan were not stringent in that case, and they said, suffice that he has a machshava, that is enough to make it mutter betiltel. Because that in itself is really considered to be a designation through machshava alone. So if all he can do is a machshava, that already changes its status and considered to be designated and set aside for the shimush heter. So in summary, we have three shittas regarding taking an item, an object of muktzah, and changing it into an object which is mutter betiltel. We have maisa, we have machshava, and we have shimush. So Rav holds that a maisa is necessary. But as we just concluded, that's only if he can do a maisa. However, if something is not bar maisa, for instance, the offer, or in the early case in the Gemara with the Beis HaAval, Beis HaMishta, that they were preoccupied. They couldn't make the maisa. In that case, a machshava is sufficient. As the Gemara told us, Rav concurs with the Shita of Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia that a maisa is required generally. Shmuel teaches us a maisa is not required, merely intending, having a machshava, planning on using it on Shabbos is sufficient. And he follows the Shita of Shimon Gamliel. Finally, we have Shita's Rav Asi who tells us that shimush, merely using the object before Shabbos, already grants it a status of a non-muktzah item, And as Gemara told us, he concurs with the second brisa. We actually have a right from the Mishnah to this shita as well. Continues the Gemara. Okay, so we just learned a new concept that even according to the shita, that ordinarily requires a maisa, an action, in order to remove its muksa status. But if it's not feasible, then it's not needed. Says the Gemara, this is actually based on machlokes Tanoi. Kitanoi, we have one brayso which tells us, Ba'koil chofen es hakelim. One can use any sort of substance to polish a vessel on Shabbos. Chutz mikli chesa begartikoin. Except if he uses gartikoin, which was tartar, which was found in the bottom. Rashi says it's deposited in the chavish shel yain, barrels of wine. Alum. So this material, this gartikoin, cannot be used in the polishing of klei chesav, of silver utensils. Why? Explains Rashi. Because klei chesav, silver items are softer, are more delicate, and when he rubs it with this gartikoin, he's actually not just polishing it, he's not just shining it, he's actually being memachik, he's smoothing out the klei chesav, and that is a malacha of memachik. It's an av malacha. Therefore, one should not use the gartikoin to polish with it klei chesef. Continues the brayso. Abol neser v'choil muter. However, to use neser, some sort of earth, v'choil, sand, he can use it even in the polishing of klei chesef. That's okay. V'atanya, we have another brayso which tells us neser v'choil aser. One cannot use neser v'choil in polishing. Says the Gemara, what is the point of contention here? My love, you must say, this is the point of disagreement. It's a muksa discussion. The Mar Savar Bin and Maisa. The Brisa number 2 holds that Neser v'choil is muksa. Why? Because even though it's not feasible to do a Maisa with it, to change its form, therefore the concept of doing a Maisa to remove its muksa status, is not practical here. Nevertheless, since a Maisa wasn't done, there's still muktzah. The Neser v'choil remains muktzah. You need a Maisa in all circumstances. Therefore, the Brisa says you can't use Neser v'choil. The first Brisa holds, Umar Savar, loy bein a Maisa. In this case, of the Neser v'choil, since it is an item which a Maisa is not feasible to be done to it, a Maisa is not required. Machshava alone is sufficient. Therefore, one can indeed use Neser v'choil on Shabbos. So apparently this concept mentioned earlier is actually the point of contention between two Tanoi. Whether or not a Maisa is still required, even when we're speaking about an item, an object, which is lav bar Maisa, where it's not practical to do a Maisa to it. Says Mer, no, it's actually not a muktzah discussion. Loi, the Kuli Alma, all agree Loi being a Maisa. In this case, a Maisa is not required, Machshav is sufficient. It's actually not a muksa discussion. The point of contention, the point of disagreement between these two Tanaim is unrelated to muksa. It's actually related to the malach of memachik. Says the Gemara, Kash, it's not difficult. The contradiction will be explained as follows: Har Rabbi Yehuda, Har Rabbi Shimon. One brayso says follow Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, the other one reflects Shittas Rabbi Shimon. Because even Neser v'choil can perhaps also smooth out the klei chesef. It can have that smoothing effect, which is av malacha. However, it's a davar she'ein miskaven. He has no intention of doing this malacha. He's merely trying to polish the klei chesef. So this is considered to be a davar she'ein miskaven. One does one act, one maisa, which will perhaps result in a secondary act, malacha, be performed, but without his kavanah, without his intention to do that malacha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's aser. Davar she'ein miskaven is aser. According to Rabbi Shimon, it's mutter. So indeed, the two brises are disagreeing on this point. One is following Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, who holds Har Rabbi Yehuda, the Omar Davar she'ein miskaven is aser, and therefore Neser v'choil cannot be used in polishing the klei chesef, for concern that it might smooth it out, even though he has no kavanah for that. Davar she'ein miskaven is aser. The first brisa which allows is Harab Shimon, following the sheet of Rav Shimon, the Omar, Davar Shem Eskaven is mutter. So it's unrelated to Muktzah. The brises are discussing the malacha of Memachik, and there's a concern that perhaps that will take place Shloi B'Kavana. And the brises are dependent on the shittas of Rabbi Yehuda, who prohibits, and Rav Shimon, who allows. Continues the Gemara. B'mayu kimta lahadishari. Okay, how have you established and interpreted this brisa which allows the use of Neser V'Choil on Shabbos? Rav Shimon. It's following shittas of Rav Shimon. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a look at the seifa, the latter part of that brisa. Ema seif. The brisa says so you can use it in polishing the kelim. Aval, you must know that he can't use it. Lo yochavem rosh sa'ar. He can't use the Neser V'Choil to clean his hair with it. Why? Because there's a concern that it will pull out some hair, and that's a malacha. Says in 1 second, if we're following shittas Reb Shimon, why is that asur? Vi Reb Shimon, who says davar she'ein miskaven is mutter mishra kashari. We find that Reb Shimon actually allows the use of Neser V'Choil. He's not concerned about pulling out hair. It's unintentional. It's not something inevitable. It's something that may not happen, and it's unintentional. And therefore, there should be mutter on Shabbos. Says, I'll bring you a right. This is not, as we find in the Mishnah, this is with regard to a Nazir who accepted upon himself a vow not to take a haircut. Says Reb Shimon, Nazir chayfif mefasfis. A Nazir can indeed wash his hair, can clean his hair using the Neser V'Choil, these agents. Or mefasfis, he can also manually separate the hair with his finger. There's no concern about pulling out hair. But he cannot use a comb to comb his hair, because in that case, as Rashi says in the 4th line, because it certainly will pull out some hair, and since it's inevitable that will happen, it's us even according to Reb Shimon. So we see clearly that even according to Reb Shimon, there's no concern when one uses the Neser V'Choil agents to clean his hair. There's no concern about pulling out hair. It's considered to be a davar she'ein miskaven. So how can the brisa tells us this brisa, which is following shittas of Shimon? How could that brisa tell us that on Shabbos one cannot clean his hair using Neser V'Choil? Says the Gemara, apparently it's not following Shimon's shita. Ella, you must say rather ha Rav Yehuda. Both brises are following shittas of Yehuda. They reflect Rav Yehuda's opinion, which holds that davar she'ein miskaven is asur. That explains why he can't use the Neser V'Choil to clean his hair. We're concerned about pulling out hair. If so, how are you going to reconcile this apparent contradiction between the brisa which says that Neser V'Choil can be used in polishing the klei chesef, the other brisa which tells us that it's asur to be used for that purpose? How are you going to answer that steer? Says the Gemara, there are 2 Tanoim which base their opinions on Rabbi Yehuda. They both concur with Rabbi Yehuda's concept that davar she'ein miskaven is asur. So what is the point of contention between them? Hi Tana Ali Rabbi Yehuda Savar. So one Tana who's following Rabbi Yehuda's shita holds Gorer, that we are concerned about this Neser V'Choil smoothing out the klei chesef, which is a malacha, is a davar she'ein miskaven and it's asur. So this is brisa number 2, which told us that one cannot use Neser V'Choil. The high Tana, however, the first Tana who told us that it is mutter to use Neser V'Choil to polish the klei chesef, he holds, he's following Rabbi Yehuda's shita. The high Tana lead Rabbi Yehuda, Savar Loiger, he holds that there's no concern with this Neser V'Choil. It won't scrub, it won't smooth out these silver items, and therefore there's no concern even according to Rabbi Yehuda. So once again, in conclusion, both brises are following shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that davar she'ein miskaven is asur. The point of contention is simply whether or not this Neser V'Choil will be memachik, will smooth out those klei chesef. Says Mar, okay, but mayu kimta Rabbi Yehuda. How have you established these brises? They reflect Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Ema seifa. Let's take a look at the bottom part of the brisa number 1. The brisa told us he can use the Neser V'Choil for klei chesef, but he cannot use it to clean his hair on account of a concern that it will pull out his hair. But the brisa concludes by saying, although he can't use it to clean his hair, avol But he could use it, panav yad ragla muta, he can use it to wash his face, hands, and feet. Says the Gemara, why is that allowed? Hame'aver seir. He's going to pull out hair of his beard. Says the Gemara, very simply, katan. One answer is speaking about a minor who doesn't have a beard, they katan. Isha, woman who doesn't have a beard. A man who has a medical condition where he doesn't have a beard growing. So there's no concern of pulling out any hair. So in summary, we have two brises. Brisa number one, which tells us that one can use neser v'choil in polishing the silver items. Brisa number two, which says it's asur. How are we going to reconcile this apparent contradiction? So we have three stages in the Gemara. Initially we figured it was a muktzah question. First brisa says, a maisa is not required. It's not muktzah. Second brisa says, a maisa is required to nullify the muktzah status from the neser v'choil, and therefore they're muktzah. The Gemara retracted from that and proceeded and said, no, all agree, in the case of choil, neser v'choil, since it's not practical, a maisa there is not feasible, a maisa is not required, merely a machshava is sufficient to remove its muktzah status. So what then is the point of contention between two brises? It's nothing to do with muktzah. The discussion here is a malacha v'machik. Since by using the neser v'choil to polish the klei chesef, it carries a concern, a possibility that it will smooth it out, which is a malacha v'machik. Although it's davar she'ein meskaven, perhaps that is also. And indeed, that is the point of contention. According to the first brisa, which is following Shittas Reb Shimon, it's mutter because davar she'ein meskaven is mutter. Second brisa, which reflects Rabbi Yehuda's shita, holds that it's asur because davar she'ein meskaven is asur. The Gemara fell away from that and concluded that both brises are reflecting Shittas Rabbi Yehuda. The machlekes simply is whether there's a concern by neser v'choil whether or not is going to smooth out the klei chesef. According to the first brisa, there is no concern that it will do that. According to the second brisa, there is a possibility that it will be goyer, it will smooth it out, and therefore we don't allow him to use it, because even though he has no kavanah to smooth out the klei chesef, davar she'ein meskaven is asur. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, offer leventa, a crushed brick, shari, one can use it to clean his hair, to clean his face, even if he has a beard. There's no concern that it will rip out hair. Amar Rav Yosef, kuspa de yasmin, pulp of sesames, of crushed sesames, is also shari, can be used for that purpose. Amar Rava, offer pilpuli shari, crushed peppers. These two are mutter, powdered peppers are mutter. There's no concern with these agents of pulling out hair. Amar Rav Sheshes, barda shari. This agent called barda is also permitted for this use. My barda, what exactly is this? Amar Rav Yosef. It actually has three ingredients. Tilsa ahola, it is a third ahola. Rashi says it is a root, shirish of an asev that's called all. So a third of it is this ahola, the tilsa asa, a third of it is a asa hadas, a myrtle. The tilsa sigli, a third is made of violets. So it's a third, and a third. So when it's used in this proportion, it's okay. So apparently, if you use more than a third of the ola in it, it makes it too powerful, too potent, which will carry with it a risk of pulling out here. Omar Mechami bar Yosef. No, even more than a third of ola is okay. Koleicha the lekaruba ola shaper dami. As long as this barda agent, this cleaning agent, doesn't contain a majority of ola, it's okay. Even if it contains more than a third of ola, it doesn't carry a risk of pulling out hair on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara, Bo minei Rav Sheshes. They ask the following shaila Rav Sheshes. Ma'ul if tzoya zeisem b'Shabbos. May one go ahead and take olives and crush it onto a rock on Shabbos. The crushing process sweetens it somewhat. So can that be done on Shabbos? Now what is the concern? He explains Tosfos, perhaps it's asur because he's being mesaken the oichel, he's fixing the food, perhaps that's asur. Amalu, so Rav Sheshes responded, you ask about Shabbos? Why do you focus on Shabbos? How are you allowed to do this even during the weekday? Because Savar, Rav Sheshes holds, he can't do it. On account of wasting the food. How's he wasting the food? Because the oil that gets squeezed out when he crushes the olives goes to waste. So therefore it's not allowed to be done even during the weekdays. Says the Gemara, really? Lema pliga de Shmuel, perhaps. Apparently, Rav Sheshes is in disagreement with Shmuel, who told us, Damar Shmuel, Oisa Adam Kol Tzarka V'Pas. One can use bread for any purpose. For instance, Rashi says, to be being tashmish to be used as I think the Gemara over there says in brachos to lean on it, the bowl. So for any personal use, or Rashi says to crumble into a dish. So Shmuel holds that pas can be used for anything. So apparently Rav Sheshes disagrees with him. He holds that crushing it is a problem. Says more there's a difference. Hamri, they said pas le meisa. When he uses the bread for his purpose, he's not being memayis the pas. He's not making it repulsive. He's not ruining it. He's not wasting it. Hani meisi, but these olives, meaning the juice that comes out of the olives, goes to waste. It becomes repulsive, and therefore it's not allowed to be done. It's not allowed to be done even during the weekdays. Continues the Gemara. Ameimar umar zutra Ravashi. Havayasu. So Ameimar and Marzutra were sitting. Ameimar together with Marzutra and Rav Ashi, they were sitting Aisil Kamayu Barda. So Barda, this cleansing agent that we discussed earlier, was brought before them. And what did they do with it? Ameimar Rav Ashi, Moshu. Ameimar and Rav Ashi both washed themselves with it. Some say Mashiach died, their hands with this Barda. Marzutra did not use it. He hesitated to use this Barda. So Amrulay, they told him, what's wrong? Why do you refuse to use this? Apparently it was on Shabbos, and he refused to use it in a place, they figured he was afraid of pulling out hair. Why are you concerned with using this barda? Do you not hold the Rav Sheshes who told us? Do you not hold the Rav Sheshes? There's no concern of pulling out any hair. Amar Lahura Mordechai. So Mordechai responded to them, to Ameimar Rav Ashi. He says, look, Bar Minei Demar, count him out of the equation. It's not because of this. It's not on account of a concern of pulling out hair on Shabbos that he is refusing to use his barda. Because even during the weekday, he will not do it. Afilu b'choil nami loy. Nami loy. Even during the weekday, he wouldn't use his barda. Lamiloi svirle. He doesn't hold that one is allowed to use his barda. Now apparently this barda was not just something which simply cleaned. It was something which beautified the person. It was apparently had a cosmetic property to it, and therefore he refused to use it even during the weekday. Why? Savala, because he held the sanya, like the following brisa, which says Megar Adam, one could scrape off gildei tsoya, crust of dirt from his body, v'gildei maka, crust of a wound, shal b'sarai, b'shvil tsarai, because it's inconveniencing him, it's uncomfortable. V'im b'shvil yapos, but if the purpose of his hair is to beautify oneself, asur, that is not allowed. Why is it asur? Says Rashi right off to the side. Mishum leyapos is atzmei asur, says Rashi. Mishum lo yilbash gever sim lasisha. Torah says a male is not to wear a article of clothing, a women's article of clothing. Here too, one cannot beautify himself using this agent, this barda, because this isra applies to all types, all forms of beautification. Beautifying oneself, grooming oneself is a woman's thing. A man is not allowed to get himself involved in this. Therefore, he refused to clean himself with this barda. Says the Gemara, if so, what did they hold? Ameimar and Rav Ashi, who indeed used this barda, why was it allowed? V'inu they keman savru. Who did they hold like? Says the Gemara, V'inu keman savru ki hod sanya, like the following brisa. One is meant to wash his face, hands, and feet every day, on account of respect and honor for Hashem. As it says, everything Hashem created in this world, for His honor. As Rashi explains, this is the next Rashi off to the side, to honor and respect Hashem. What is the connection between washing oneself, keeping oneself clean, with respect to Hashem? Says Rashi, very simple. Hashem created a human being in His own form, in His own tselem. So maintaining a clean body when one sees the other person's tselem, form, clean, he relates to Hashem differently. It brings a person closer to Hashem because a person's surah, a person's form, it resembles Hashem's surah, kaviyachol. And therefore, he relates to Hashem with a different relationship. He relates to him, it brings him closer to Hashem. V'oit, says Rashi, another reason a person sees handsome briyos, nice looking, clean looking people, so one sees nice briyos, nice creatures, he tends to thank Hashem. It arouses a feeling of appreciation to Hashem. So on account of both of these reasons, number one, because the person's form, person's surah resembles Hashem's surah, one is meant to keep it clean, so that others will relate to Hashem's surah with the utmost respect, will bring them closer to Hashem. Therefore, that is one reason to wash oneself. Number two, because briyos yafos evoke people's feeling of appreciation to Hashem. So it's for a good purpose. It's a shem shamayim. Therefore, certainly one is meant to wash himself every single day. Continues the Gemara. Rab Lezer bar Azariah Omer, kupa matal sida v'noitel. We're discussing the kupa, the box containing the insulated pot, which was insulated using the gizeit semer, the shearings of wool, which are muksa. Rab Lezer bar Azariah says, don't remove the pot from there. Simply tip over the entire box and remove the contents in that manner. Chacham say it's okay, you can take out the pot and return it. Continues the Gemara. Omar Rab Abba, Omar Rav Chiba Rashi, Omar Rav. Hakol moedim, all agree, Shem neskalkal haguma, that if the cavity where the hole where the pot was sitting, it was neskalkal, it got ruined, the gizeit semer collapsed into the cavity, all agree that it's muktzah, she'asa, you can't go push back the gizeit semer. As Sessions points out, he can't use the pot to push them aside, because he's directly handling the gizeit semer. Even if he uses the pot to do that, it's also considered to be tiltul muktzah and it's asur. Okay, says the Gemara. Let's take a look at the Mishnah. Tonight we learned in the Mishnah. He may remove the pot and put it back in its place. And Rav Lezer bar Azariah says, no, he can't do so. How are we going to understand this machlekes? Hey Chidami, what are we speaking about? What happened here? If the cavity has not been disturbed, Shafi Kamar Rabbanon, then we understand the Rabbanon perfectly. What's wrong with putting back the pot? There's no muktzah involved. And as Taisus points out, what is the reason for Shittas Rav Lezer bar Azariah? Why does he prohibit? Ela Lav must be speaking about Afal Pishin Eskalkal Guma. And even if the Guma collapsed, there's Gizeit Semer inside the cavity. According to Rabbanon, one may put back the pot, because you can push around the Gizeit Semer using the pot. So apparently, the Mishnah is indicating not like the statement of Abu Toras that the Gizeit Semer are asur. Once they fall into the cavity, cannot push them aside. Says no, we're speaking about the cavity hadn't collapsed. We're not discussing moving around the Gizeit Semer. There's certainly muktzah. So what then is the point of contention? What is the machlekes between Rav Lezer bar Azariah and Rabbanon? It's a question of concern. Mar savar choishishin shemen eskalkel, or some garish choishishin shemen eskalkel. Rav Lezer bar Azariah is concerned that if he takes out the pot completely from the hole, from the cavity, we're concerned that perhaps the Gizeit Semer will collapse into this hole, and he'll be inclined to go ahead and push them around and be metaltal muktzah. So don't remove the pot. Choishishin shemen eskalkel aguma. Omar sav, the Chacham said, no, ain't choishishin, we're not concerned. As the Farshim explained, it would be gzera. If we have to apply an isser in this case, you can't remove the pot. That's one gzera. I'm concerned that the guma will collapse and he'll go ahead and touch muktzah, which is really isser d'Rabbanan. So it's really a double gzera, double d'Rabbanan, and the Chacham hold. We do not apply an isser in this case. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, Hayis likusta. So it actually explains this is a plant, a pleasant looking and smelling plant, which was inserted into a container of moist earth, and it would be removed when one wanted to smell it. So this slikusta, this plant, this asif, can it be removed on Shabbos from this offer? It depends. Dotza, if it was inserted into the offer, shalfa and removed, v'hadar dotza and inserted again before Shabbos, sharia, in this case it's mutter, because the hole was already widened and broadened, And when one goes and removes this asep, this plant on Shabbos, he's not generating, he's not creating a hole. He's not doing the malach of chofer. V'ilav, however, if this plant was not put in and out twice, then the hole is too narrow, it's too tight, it's too firm. Also, he can't remove it on Shabbos because doing so it broadens the hole and it's considered to be a malach of chofer. Amar Shmuel Simon Halacha, Hai Sakina, this knife, the Beni Urvi, which was plucked between the rows of bricks. Here too, we required that from before Shabbos, it had been already put in twice. Dotza, it had been put in, Shalfa withdrawn, Vada Dotza, and placed in again between the bricks. In that case, Shari, it is mutter to do it on Shabbos, because in that case the hole is wide enough. V'ilav Asr, however, if it wasn't done to this extent, it's Asr to do it on Shabbos because he is making a hole, and making a hole is Asr, it's a malacha of Taldav Boina. Continues the Gemara, third case, Marzutra, V'tem Rav Ashi Omar, Bigur Daisa Dekani Shabradami. We have a clump of rods, which are, reeds, which are growing tightly together. One can go ahead and stick his knife between them. There's no concern. What could be the concern? There's no concern that perhaps the peel of the reed will get peeled off and he's doing a malach v'machek. There's no concern. Now Taisus points out, how can you use the reeds on Shabbos? One is not meant to use a tree on Shabbos. Says Taisus was speaking about it's within 3 tefachim of the karka and it's allowed. Says the Gemara, Amar Leira Mordechai LeRav, Moser of Katina to Yufter of Katina asked the following kasha. How could Rav Huna say that the only way you can pull out a plant from the earth is if the hole was sufficiently widened before Shabbos? Otherwise, you can't do it. The following Mishnah seems to indicate otherwise. The Mishnah says, one who buries turnip or radishes, tachas agef, underneath a vine. He did it for the purpose of storage, of safekeeping. He didn't intend to plant it there. Says the Mishnah, if some of the leaves were exposed, there's no concern. He's not mixing up two species, he's not planting it under the vine. He can do it on Shemitah. He doesn't have to be concerned about Chiv Maisa. Perhaps the radishes grew on the ground. Now Rashi points out that the point of the leaves being exposed is specifically stated for the halacha of muktzah. For the halacha of Kalaim Shvi'is and Maisa, there's no need to have leaves exposed. But to remove it on Shabbos, he needs leaves. So he can pluck it out using those leaves, even though when he pulls it out, some of the earth around the hole will get moved around. We see there's no concern. Here as well, says Reb Katina, he can pull out the plant from the earth, even though when he does so, some of the earth around this pre-existing hole will get loosened up. There's no concern. It's not considered to be a malacha to yuft. Indeed, this is a refutation or a Rav Huna's chiddush. Even when it's tightly fitting, he can go pull it out on Shabbos. Okay, time for a chazara on today's daf. So the daf began discussing the gizeit semer shearings of wool which are muktzah. The Gemara told us that if he permanently designates them, for instance, for atmana, then they lose their muktzah status. If he is miyachad them, then they're mutter b'tiltel. However, if he merely uses them for atmana, then it depends. Ordinary gizeit semer lose their muktzah status based on that. However, those gizeit semer sitting in the heftek, this warehouse, this pile of commercial items, intended specifically for commercial use, those gizeit semer retain their muktzah status, even if he used them for atmana, unless he specifically is miyachad them, he permanently designates them for atmana. The Gemara proceeded and told us that even an object which is muktzah can lose its muktzah status provided that he designates it for shimush heter. We have 3 shittas. What is required? One shitta says a ma'isa is required. It needs to do an action which will facilitate its use. The Gemara actually proceeded and concluded that when that's not feasible, then certainly a machshava designation is enough, even according to this shitta. We have another shita which says a ma'isa is not required. Merely planning, intending on using it is sufficient. The machshava is enough. Rav Asi holds that none of those are required. Merely using it, shimush, is sufficient. If you use it in our Shabbos, that itself is sufficient to grant it heter tiltel. The Gemara proceeded by giving us a contradiction and a parent stira between one brayso which says one may use neser v'choil to polish his silver with. The other brayso prohibits. The Gemara had 3 stages. Initially, the Gemara said it's a muksha discussion. The Gemara proceeded and said, no, we're discussing a possible malacha, a davar shein meskaven. One sheet is following Reb Shimon who says it's mutter. The other Brisa is following Rabbi Yehuda says it's Asr. We conclude that both are reflecting Shittas Rabbi Yehuda. That David Shem is counted as Asr. The Brisa which allows holds that there's no concern of smoothing out the Kli Chesed with the Neser V'Choyel. It won't happen. The other Brisa says it's Asr. Perhaps it will smooth out the Kli Chesed. The Gemara preceding that told us that this cleansing agent called Barda is mutter. There's no concern of it pulling out here. The Gemara told us that one may not waste food. Hefsed Oichlin. One is meant to wash his face, hands, and feet for the sake of Hashem's honor. The Gemara told us that according to the Chacham, one may pull out the pot from the cavity. There's no concern that the guma will collapse and he will do muktzah. And finally, one can pull out this plant from the earth. There's no concern of generating a hole on Shabbos.